All right. Um, Today we're going to work on mapping gamepads. And I have something like 6 or 7 different gamepads around the house. I worked on this some yesterday, and so I have this ancient Power A mini Xbox One controller, and if I plug it in, it's going to instantly pop up the mapper because the control stick is really loose, and so it just constantly spams inputs. Um, so that's something that's a case we'll have to deal with. So if I go to the game, whoop. So this looks like crap, and this is going to continue to look like crap until until we're a little bit farther along. I'm going to make the crappy looking version that works, and then I will go back and make it nice with like bespoke artwork and stuff. So input from unknown controller, would you like to use it? So I don't think no currently works. No, it does not. So let's fix that. Um, where do I sit this controller? Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's see. Doodly-doo, I'm in the wrong place. Okay. Ignore prompted controller. I'll call it gamepad because I've been calling it gamepad everywhere. Let's see if prompt needed. Let's see. Prompt needed, and we'll say joysticks. Instance ID, and then we'll say joystick ignored equals true. I think that's a ref, so that should be allowed. But we'll see. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. And then in our actual mapper, say ignore gamepad. Well, if autocomplete would ever work, I could be so much faster. I could be so much faster. Okay. Ignored equals true. And then we'll say needs, what is it called? Prompt needed equals false. This is quite messy right now, but that's okay. And we'll say prompt last event reset. I think that's allowed on that type. We'll find out. Oh, would you like to use it? No. Okay, that doesn't work. Why not? Joystick info is a ref type, I think. Yes, it is. So what is the issue? It might be... No, that's all fine. Well... Okay, so let's see. In that case, where is the dang code? In that case, so does this get reset to true every event? Is that what's happening? Come on now. If not, prompt needed. Oh, we need to check if it's actually ignored. I thought we already... Yeah, we check if it's ignored right here. So what's the issue? So basically, I wanted to allow using any arbitrary... Oh, well now it appears to not be broken, although I'm leaving the game paused. That's not right. So let's fix that. Context scene paused. Or no, it's scene paused. Gamepad is false. I wanted to allow arbitrary USB controllers that work with the joystick API, and I also wanted to sidestep issues with gamepad API. I didn't mean to hit that. Hit the wrong prompt. Okay, so we can ignore. And now I can go on this controller and spam. Oh my god. So now that I've ignored the controller, I can go and spam inputs on it, and absolutely nothing happens. And you can see the events being logged down there. However, if I unplug the controller and plug it back in, it should, well, when it reconnects, it will offer me again to do it. If I hit yes, it'll bring me to this screen, and so my next job is to actually track that you're holding a button down and respond to that. So this code's going to be very ugly, and then I'll tidy it up later. Actually, I should just leave the game window up at all times, because that makes the stream look interesting when people show up and they're like, what are they doing? Okay. Well, this seems to be... Really? Do I not respect that anymore? I guess I don't. I guess I sure don't respect that. Yeah, I don't even check that anywhere. And now my cat is meowing to be let outside. So I shall be right back already, annoyingly. All right, so let me go and fix this real quick. And so does this check if we have... Okay, no. Where do we do this? I don't even need that anymore. I keep getting distracted because I'll look at the stream and it still shows be right back, and I'm like, oh, did I leave that on? But I haven't. It gets me every time. Let's see, if has focus. or get tweak debug tick in background, right? Yeah. So we'll do that real quick. No. Oh, right. Default value. Okay. There's our little game window in the corner of the screen. And it's still not freaking ticking. What the heck? Right. Okay. Now it's ticking. Yay. Alright, so what we need to do now is we need to actually watch the buttons being pressed, which I was starting to do down here. Something else we need to do is we might need to expose some of these things briefly. And we also might need to be able to say prompt mode is going to be, what is it going to be? It's going to be we'll just define it because we apparently have it. Gamepad prompt mode. Prompt buttons. Prompt axes. Prompt mode equals prompt buttons. Okay. And so then what we'll do down here is say set prompt mode. Alright. Means this needs to be exposed. So what we'll do when we start this is we'll say gamepad set prompt mode. Gamepad prompt, or what is it called? It's called prompt buttons, right? What is the complaint? Right. Gamepad prompt mode. There we go. All right. So there's that. And that's not exposed either. Whoops. Okay. Let's see. So then what we need to do is we need to go down here and depending on the prompt mode, we need to handle this differently. So if the prompt mode, if there's a prompt active and it's for buttons, then we need to ignore axis and ball motion. Honestly, with ball motion, we might just ignore it anyway. I don't know. Maybe we should support it. I don't know. I don't have a controller with a ball to test, so for now we're just gonna pretend they don't exist. Let's see. Buy a controller with a ball input. Alright, allow ignoring a controller. We did that. Okay, so joy axis motion. If needs prompt needed and prompt mode equals prompt buttons, so equals false, else we'll do this stuff. Alright, so ignore axes when we're not in axis mode. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you have a loose control stick, it's often just kind of flopping around and sending a bunch of events. So there's that. And so now in here, if we get the last event, then last event kind, and we have of joy button down, joy button up. Well, actually, we only care about button down events here, and then we'll also have of joy hat motion because these are the two button options that we're going to do. What's the problem? Not all cases are covered. Yes, I know. We should maybe do an error here. Error spurious gamepad event. Okay, so if it was a button down, I'll make this a variable first of all. Then we'll say yeah, we need to check timestamp as well. So we'll say if last event j button timestamp is greater than 0, then we'll say button down equals true. And say if last event j hat timestamp greater than 0 and last event j hat value doesn't equal 0, button down equals true. And so I think that should highlight that we're pressing a button now, I think. So do we want to map it? Yes. Oh Lord. Spurious event. Oh yeah. Right, because when there's no 0, right? Event none. Is there like a none event? Or is it event? Is it quit event that's 0? Let's go see. No, it is not. Okay, and that's just an int. That's the problem. And that's not allowed because stupid reasons. If last event doesn't equal 0. Okay. All right, so now if I hold a button on my controller, we light up the screen, which is what I wanted. And then the next thing that works for buttons, and it also works for the hat, the gamepad, or the D-pad on this controller is a hat. On some of my controllers, it's just proper buttons. So I'm glad I have both to test. So that sure does appear to work. And it works for holding down the thing as well, since we're ignoring axes. What is all this crap? What on earth is all of that? What the heck is going on? That's bizarre. Why is it spamming button up events? Oh, right, I don't care about them. Okay, let's just discard here because we don't care about any of that. For now, anyway. Okay, so then what we need to do is see how long the button has been held. I think these time steps are in SDL ticks, I want to say. So if, so we'll say let time held equals if not button down 0, else we'll do, actually, we should do this. So we'll get a timestamp here. And then, now these timestamps in C, they're actually in the same exact place, so I should just be able to access it on the event. But I think I might have to do a weird cast or something in nim to allow that. That's we're gonna have get ticks minus timestamp. I don't like that. We should actually do it in frames properly. So let's go up here and we'll have button timer. It's going to be an int button timer started. We'll have input timer started. That's what we'll do. Actually, yeah, that's fine. So what we'll do down here is we'll say self input timer started is going to be the current number of ticks, and we'll do that in both of these cases. So time started is going to be if not button down 0, else context ticks minus self input timer started. So we'll do that, and then we will so if the button is down, we're going to have a progress bar, and we'll have progress bar length is going to be 45 frames, let's say. We'll call this duration since it'll have a visual length. And so we'll draw a big progress bar. So we're going to draw a rect, which is going to be at, I need to pick a good spot. Let's just go and, I hate when Windows updates and reboots, and also I hate when Windows randomly blue screens while it's asleep. And it's like, well, what were you doing while you were asleep, my friend? Let's see, that is, where are we at? We are at 56, 112. So I'll come in here and say 56, 112, And then we'll go and see how wide our selection is. It is 136 by 8. 136 by 8. And then we'll say fill rect, which will be 58, 114, 134 by 6, color green, actually both of these, we'll just make them yellow for the moment. What's the gripe here? Right, that's the maximum length, so we need to get progress equals time held float over progress bar duration. We'll call this width. So I'll do this times 134. And then we'll cast that to an int. Pass in width here. And so now we should get a progress bar. And it looks like doo-doo. Okay. It's also not filling up. So firstly, let's move it down. And let's see, time held. I'm really not sure. Oh, wait, because, right, because we're restarting at every frame. And also, we're going to want to, we are going to want to ease out, cubic probably would look okay. And so then what we'll do up here is we'll have input active bool. And so what we'll do is we'll say if not self input active, do all this. Equals true, and then this button down situation goes away. Input active, and then button down self input active. Okay. Timestamp is declared but not used. It sure is. All right. Yeah, sure. Now if I hold the button down, oh, right. We should probably clamp that. Whoops. Should also probably store the active input. So I want to do that. Would you like to use it? Yes. Hold the button down. and we fill up. The one problem with this is we don't want to one problem with this is sure. All right, so now we've got our progress bar, but we need to detect if you let go of the input that was held. I'm just moving things around. Yeah, it looks a little better. Okay. So we'll have input event. It's going to be an event. So down here, else, we're going to do the same maneuver. In here, we're going to say self input event equals last event. And then we'll say case. Well, actually, no. So what we actually want to do is if you push a different button, we want to switch to that button. And then for that latest button press, we want to see if that particular input has been released. So the problem with that is just having one event is probably not going to cut it. So what we probably want to actually have here, instead of like last event or whatever, we probably want to have like prompt last press and prompt last release. So we'll have prompt last press and prompt last release. And so then what we'll do is we'll go to these. We'll say if e.kind in joy button down, joy mode, or well, no. If it's joy button down or joy hat motion and ej hat value is not 0, then we will say prompt last press equals e. Elif e kind joy button up or joy hat. This doesn't work either. We need a list of presses and releases from the current frame is actually the trick, which is a bit obnoxious. Or well, you should only care about the release for the most recent press, but there could be multiple releases in one frame. Maybe we should move the actual binding timing and stuff in here instead of doing it in the mapper itself. That makes sense to me. So when we're in the buttons prompt mode, whenever a button press event comes in, so a hat event where the value is not 0 or a button down event, then we will set prompt last press, right? So we'll say if prompt mode is going to be prompt buttons, then we'll say if e kind equals joy button down, or e kind equals joy hat motion, and e j hat value is not 0, then we'll say let is press equals that stuff. Then we'll say if is press, then we'll say prompt last press equals e. Then we'll have a let is release is going to be e kind equals joy button up, or e kind equals joy hat motion, and e j hat value is 0 if is release. Last release equals e. So what we can actually do here, if we're doing this all in place, is we can say if it's a release, check if it's the release of the last press. And if it is, then we'll clear that out. So we actually don't need the last release to be stored, I don't think. So if it's a press, then we store it. Else, or well, no, we could check if it's a release. That makes sense. If it's a release, then we want to check if it matches, if it's for the last press. So we'll say if last press kind is joy button down, we'll say if e kind equals joy button up, and e j button equals last press j button, then prompt last press reset. And we'll say echo bind button released. So we'll do that. Then we'll have elif joy hat motion. Let's say if e kind is joy hat motion, and e j hat. Can there be more than one hat? Or do we need to do which on this? Or I guess it would be hat. Equals released. So let's see. Actually, what we're going to do here is we're going to have proc is press event. We'll have event. Okay. And then we'll have proc is release event. Where we'll grab this stuff. So then we'll say if E is press event, and then we'll have E is release event. That goes away. So we'll do that, and then what we'll do is we'll say, because we have the get last event. Proc should say prompt is pressed do equals prompt last press is press event. This is messy, but we'll clean it up later. Okay, so what we'll do then in here is we'll say, so if not self active, and we'll say, do we need that actually? We'll leave it for now. Doing a stream early on a Wednesday feels very weird. I doubt if anybody will show up, but oh well. What the heck is it called? Prompt is pressed. Is that not? No, it is. Okay. Prompt is pressed. Then self input event equals gamepad get last prompt event. And then we'll say self input active equals true. And self input timer started equals context text. This is going to go away, but I'll keep it for now. And so we don't really need some of this like overwrought crap. So now what we'll do is we need to reset it, right? So if input is active and if not, gamepad prompt is pressed. Actually, we should just make these the outer ifs. And I'll say if self input active. Say self input active equals false. Okay. Yes. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Works for buttons and works for the hat. Okay. And we might make the progress bar a little bit longer. We might also change the ease in out cubic and see how that looks. I probably just want an ease out because I want to show immediate progress when you start pressing a button. Well, it does do a little. That's not bad. I need to fix the rendering when you've just pressed A there. So we'll change this to be clamp. Actually, no, we won't. I'll change this to be a minimum of 1. Right, we want the max there. Duh. We want a width of at least 1. All right. That looks pretty good. Okay. So then what we want to do is if you've held it for the full time, we want to bind that input, and then we want to go to the next one. Oh, something I should try actually is I should try pushing a bunch of buttons and make sure it works correctly. Our timer doesn't reset when we change. Our timer doesn't reset when we change. Naughty, naughty. We should probably do the timer in here and reset it if a new press event comes in. And actually, I think we can just get that for free because get prompt held ms. Int. And so we'll say if prompt is pressed, then we'll say result equals prompt last press. Can I get it as like a general event, or do I have to literally check the specific no, that's stupid. Literally every single kind of these things has a timestamp on it. No. Maybe it's in here. This is stupid. So we should really kind of cheat here, and instead of doing this exactly the way it is in C, we should probably put the timestamp in here. And the other common things we should just put in the top level object. Because otherwise, for type safety, we're left in this thing where you're like, event, and then you have to know what kind it is to check the timestamp, which is really dumb, actually. Which we could go and say var prompt press, which we could just store it once, but That feels a little bit stupid. Okay. Equals, and then we're gonna say, this is so dumb. Joy button down, then we'll say EJ button timestamp elif e kind is going to be joy hat motion EJ hat timestamp. This is so stupid. Okay. Else, I don't know. Why not? And so then what we'll do is we'll say get prompt held ms, and so then what we'll do is we'll say get ticks minus prompt timestamp. Oh, what's the problem? Right, so uint 32, that one's also a uint 32. So what is the issue? These are all uint 32s. What are you complaining about? Oh, right, the result is an int. Duh. We don't care. Okay. All right, so the way we'll do this is equals, well, I need to change that. So else, instead of this, we're going to say gamepad. Okay, fine. Fine, autocomplete. Don't work. I didn't want you anyway. So we'll do that. Ouch. Divided by 1000 times 60 because we're we're doing this. Much crappy crap happening on this stream today. Let's see if that works or instantly breaks. So we'll boot up the game. And it will detect my controller because the control stick is loose. And I'll say yes. And I'll hold a button. Okay, so that's working correctly. And if I change buttons, it resets the timer. Okay. Which I should maybe do something like if you hold two buttons at the same time, I should maybe pop up a thing that's like, hey, quit that. But for now, this is enough to get going at the very least. So we ask you to hold a button, you hold a button, we track how long it's been, and then what we need to do is if you release the button, and what we need to actually do is set the bind time in here. So bind hold time is going to be, what is it? Is it a full second over here? It sure is. That's gonna go away because we're gonna handle it in the actual event logic instead. So what we need to do is we need to change this to be get prompt held progress, and that's going to be a float. So result is going to be that, and then what is the code over here? Right. So we get the milliseconds, and we divide it by 1,000 to get it in seconds. Got that. Float divided by 1,000 for milliseconds times 60 for 60 frames a second. And we want to divide that by bind hold time. Divide it by bind hold time, and we're going to clamp all this to 1. Actually, we should probably actually clamp it just to be safe, because we want to give back a value that we know is valid. So we'll do that, and then what we'll do is, so this time held goes away completely. And so what we'll do here is this goes away. So gamepad get progress. No. I swear to God, the Nim language server like almost works most of the time, and then sometimes it just craps out on you. And I don't know if that's actually the Nim language server that's the problem, or if it's just VS Code sucking. Okay, so that sure looks correct to me. Okay. So we detect our button presses. We should maybe print out on the screen, like, here's the button that's pressed, because maybe if you have like a buggy controller, where like there's some button sending spurious input events, you'd want to know that. That's something I'll add a to-do for later. So I'll add that up here. To do, print out the print info about the current button press so that spurious events can be detected if you have a flaky controller. All right. So all this crap goes away. All this crap goes away. And so then what we need to do is, when you have a thing and you've held it for the full duration and you release it, or actually just when you've held it that long, we need to say, okay, that is the bind for this button. And we need to actually generate the bind. Oh, excuse me. Big yawn, big stretch. Okay, so what we need to do then is, so we're going to have prompt binding, which is going to be a gamepad mapping. We'll call it prompt mapping. It's going to be a gamepad mapping. I'm going to make this, I'll leave it. I forget it. Okay. So we'll have the prompt mapping. And so what we shall do is, whenever you let go of a button, where is the code that I need? We love forward declaring things. It's our favorite. So what we'll do is, if it's a release event and we're releasing the bind button, which, let me make sure that actually prints out correctly before I continue. Okay. Yes, it does. Okay, cool. So if you release the bind button, actually, no, we don't care about that. We don't care about that at all. We'll handle this over here. So, and this stuff is in draw. That's not good. We should put that in tick. So, start. We'll say start input, and we'll say stop input. And what we also need to do is, what we need to say is if check binding, we'll say, so if self input active and gamepad progress. Are you? I literally call it all over the freaking place. Why is auto fucking? Oh, I swore. Put it in the jar. So, if the progress is complete, then we need to submit the binding. And the button. And also what we'll do down here is say let's let progress equals nah. I was gonna say we could make it green whenever it's done, but yeah, I don't know. We could do that. We could wait for you to release it instead of just automatically advancing it. We could let you like see that it's green and release, although it would be faster if we just instantly jump to the next one. But maybe having the green is like a good feedback for the person. So we'll get the progress, and then this will be progress, and then we'll say let color equals progress is 1. If progress is 1, it'll be color green. Otherwise, it'll be yellow. And then that'll be color, and that'll be color. And that should look nice, I think. At least for now. Yes, we would like to use it. That is blue. That is not green, that is blue. Excuse me? So wait, does that mean if I... Hang on. Because I do have blue. Is blue going to be green? Does that mean I've never used the color green constant as long as I've been making this game? Oh, it sure does. That's really funny. Okay, can I edit this, please? Thank you. Why is that? That should not be backwards. That is a mistake. However, no, that's red, duh. For now, we're going to do this. Byte orders, how do they work? All right. Excuse me? What? Am I high right now? Like what? Does that mean it's the alpha channel? That's a little bit sketchy. I only recently started development on this machine, and I might need to do something. I might need to reverse some of these. I might need to access them differently on Windows. Isn't it just an array? Yes. So that means I bet it's pulling the alpha channel for that, which is a bad sign. Oopsie. So does that mean if I just call color, well, that would be black, right? Color black works, so I can't really test this easily. So that should be translucent white, right? And if it's not translucent white, we have a problem. Okay, it is translucent white, so that sure appears to work. What? Is it because I'm not passing in... Well, no, because color always sets the alpha channel. What the heck is going on? That is weird. RGB. Oh, I actually just have them in the wrong place in the code, I think. Because I made them 1,000 years ago and then didn't actually draw anything with them. Yeah, it's fine. Oh my god, my constant is just wrong. Lord have mercy. Okay, let's go and fix that. So we've got green. All right, that's much better. Okay. And also, I'm going to make the delay shorter before you can interact. So interact delay equals 30 because I got to go find where that is, but it's a little bit obnoxious. Yes. Yeah, that felt much snappier. Okay. So now when the bar is full and you release, it should map that button. We should also draw the button green, not just the bar. So should move this down. Progress bar, button, rect, and we should just use the color here. All right, cool. So what we'll do is, if the button is green and you release, we will map that, and then we'll go to the next one. So bind the button. So what we'll do is we'll add a new thing that'll be like gamepad bind button, and it'll take, what is the thing? Do I not have it written in here somewhere? Oh, it's an index. That's yucky. Well, we can cast that. It's fine. I don't need to do that at all, actually. So, so it'll be self index game button, I think is what it's called. And then we'll also pass in well, it should just take the last event actually, but we can go ahead and pass it anyway. So now we need to, and then we'll say self index plus equals 1, and we'll say if self index is greater than game button I, then to go to axis prompt echo crash incoming. Okay, and then we need to go and make this be real and actual. Okay, so bind button, and we'll take which is a game button, and we'll take E, which is an event. And so then what we'll do, so whenever we start binding, we need to actually allocate this, and we don't currently. We also don't need that anymore. We need to actually allocate this thing when we start doing a prompt. So whenever we set prompt needed equals true, we'll make a new gamepad mapping when we do that. And then what we'll do is we'll say prompt mapping buttons which equals, and that is a gamepad button which has a kind and an index. And so the kind is going to be if eKind equals joy button down, then let's do gamepad. What is the, hang on, gamepad button type, which can be pad button or pad hat. Okay. So that'll be pad button, else pad hat, and then we'll have index is going to be if eKind is joy button down, EJ button, else EJ hat, oh crap, and then we're gonna have to do So we're going to have to differentiate this a bit more. Case kind of add button, discard of add hat. We're going to have hat value, which is an int. All right. So that's what we'll do. So what's the problem with that? Yeah. Okay, so we'll have if e kind, joy button down. We also need to change this. So we need to put this in here actually. So we'll have like should bind. Cool. I don't think input timer started is used anymore, is it? Is that the only place we use it? Yeah, so we don't actually use it. So that goes away. And then should bind. What we'll say is so we'll say if gamepad progress. Why does that not show up like ever? And we'll say self should bind equals true. Check it, should bind the input. And then in here we'll say if so should bind, then we will do this. So we'll say prompt mapping buttons which equals gamepad button, and the kind is going to be add button, and then the index is going to be the EJ button. Easy peasy. If e kind equals joy hat motion prompt mapping buttons, which is going to be a gamepad button again. Kind is going to be pad hat. Is it called hat index or what is it called? I already forgot. It is called, oh right, the index is the hat, and then it's hat value that we need to set. So index hat, and then hat value is going to be e j hat value. Okay. What is the problem? It's a uint 8. Well, who cares about that? Okay. That's also a uint 8, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So we'll get, for a button, we just get which button it is that's pressed, and then for a hat, we get the configuration of the hat and also which hat it is. So if we go through, we've got problems. Ah, crud. Not supported for who have default values. Oh, right, because of the -1s. Yeah. Okay. Actually, I think it's kind of stupid that we did it that way to begin with. Um, maybe instead of having an array for the mapping, we should just have a table where you can leave things off. Or instead of a table, we should make, I don't know. I like having it be an array because it's very clean. Actually, why don't we just go here and have exists. Ta-da! Okay. And we still get some issues. What's the problem? Oh, right. We need to cast that to an int. This is getting ugly. Which I think you can increment an enum. So we can just change that to be an enum instead of an index. Here in a second. Yes, we'd love to map it. Let's hold a button. Alright, so now we're making some crappy crap. And I can hold down the buttons and map them. This does feel a little bit slower than I would like. That was odd. What the heck? Okay, well, need to fix that. What happened there? Let's watch the events go by. So, oh, you can kind of like squidge it. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that is not good. Okay, so I was just rolling the D-pad around and it, okay. Hat motion is biting me a little. I think we're just not detecting it releasing correctly. Because that's the, yeah, because there won't be a release event. That's the trick. So, hat motion. Let's go look in here for hat motion. So if it's a press event, so if a prompt is needed, if we're doing an unprompt, then we do that. Well, that seems like it should do the right thing. Bind hat released every time. Oh, right, but that only happens. Right, okay, so what we need to do is check if the hat value changed if we're mapping a hat. So in here, but that just means it should be setting it every frame, right? So it shouldn't. Yeah, so here if I'm like rolling the hat, I'm changing the value. They all count for something, but what if I let the bar fill up and then I roll it? Well, that doesn't do it either. Wait, but once it's started, it's like the timestamp is just like, oh, we're never setting should bind to false. Oh my God. Okay. Okay, yeah. Now it works as expected. Okay. So now this works. Well, all right. So now we can go through the buttons and then we should crash or not. Surprisingly. I feel like we should crash here, but whatever. Okay. So I'm going to briefly run to the restroom and I shall be right back. All right. So let's see. We're going through the buttons now. Something goofy about this is in the prior input system, I mapped the control stick and like locked it to 8 directions and did nice stuff. But because you can't really rely on built-in controller mappings, I'm gonna have to make my own control stick mapper. I'm not gonna do that today, but it is on my to-do list, which it's not that hard. It'll just be different than the buttons. It'll be like, okay, move this axis slowly up and down or something so I can read the values. Um, all right, so let's go and change this. So we'll have binding button, just make it the game button, and then we'll have like binding axis as game axis. And so instead of index, that will be binding button equals button right. It's game button low. And then this is just binding button, binding button, Oh, we can't do a plus equals. Boo. Is this allowed? Probably not. Well, that's allowed. Okay. Oh, they do have ink. Okay, so I can just do that. But what happens when we increment it past the end? Hmm. Will it crash if we go off the end? Whatever. Binding button. Word. Is that okay? Binding button. Okay. So things should function the same. So would you like to use it? Yes. We'll go and do some button binds. Well, too quick on the draw. Yeah, it does crash. Okay. So that should be, yeah. Okay, so incrementing. Okay, so we'll have if self-binding button equals game button I to do finish binding. Actually, then we'll say ink self binding button, else we want to finish the binding. Finish binding, go to access prompt. Okay. So we'll say gamepad commit binding. And we'll go write gamepad commit binding in here real quick. Actually, instead of commit, we'll call it finalize binding. Finalize binding. And what we'll do there is we'll say mappings. And how does that work? So we'll say joystick is going to be joysticks prompt instance ID, and then we'll say joystick, say mappings, joystick identity equals prompt mapping. And then we'll say prompt mapping equals nil. And then we'll say should prompt map gamepad equals false. No, sorry, needs, is it prompt needed, I think? Yeah. So we'll do all that. And we'll say info adding mapping for joystick. Joystick name. Finalizing mapping for joystick. We'll get the name. What is the problem? What? right. Nope. Am I crazy? Am I crazy right now? Oh, joystick handle, sorry. Okay. So we'll do that, and then to do animation to close the thing. But for now, what we'll do is self state equals state none, and self timer equals 0. So let's see what happens. Would you like to use it? Yes. And we'll bind all the inputs. Well, all right. And the game resumes, or it should resume if I actually did the thing right. Is that everything I need to do there? Yeah, seems to be. So then the game should resume, and now we get to actually go remap the freaking inputs. Finally, we get to remap the inputs. Are you excited? I'm excited. All right. So now what we do is we go to the mapping and we look for an input to the thing. Oh. Excuse me. Which currently is going to be an obnoxious linear search. So we should maybe invert things. Maybe instead of having the mapping be like the game button to the joystick, it should be the joystick stuff to the game button. But we can do that later. Thanks, Flag Proof. All right, so if it's a button down or button up event, we've got the mapping, so we'll say mapping buttons find new. I mean, we could just write a crappy loop for bind in mapping buttons. Oh, bind is a word in nim, so we'll just have B. If B index equals, well, we'll say if B kind equals gamepad button, or well, what is it? It's like add button, yeah. If it's a pad button and okay, well, we'll see. Let's do this. Let button match equals forget it. If it's a pad button and B index equals E J button button, then this is the binding. So then what we'll do is we'll have button states. All right. Map B. Map equals E J button state bool not equals 0, let's say. And we've got a problem. Uint 8, right. Okay. elif b kind equals pad hat and b index equals e j hat hat and b hat value equals e j hat value int. So, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll say let state equals that. And so then we'll say button states map equals this. So the button is down. If the should this be a binary and because you'll want to go diagonal, and I think that might be like a two flags or together situation, but I could be wrong. We'll have to check. So this appears. Oh wait, we've got the hat motion right here. What am I, stupid? Okay. So that's that. And so here we do that here. We get this. So if it's a button, if the kind of the binding is button and they're the same index, we set the state. If the kind for this one, for hat, we go through the list and we check if it's a hat and if it's the same hat, and then the state is whether or not the values match. So let's see if that actually works. It probably won't, and we'll have to fix it, but we'll see. So we've got an unknown controller. Would you like to use it? Yeah, sure. We'll bind it. Now, if you have two controllers that are mapped connected and you're pressing buttons on both of them, it will make a difference. Well, it sure doesn't look like this is being remapped to me. Okay, why not? Let's see. If mappings has key. Da, 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 da. We are definitely calling this. Let's go to our input library. Let's see. Add dot init button state. And what does button state do? It just grabs the button state. So by the time this runs, should things be in a dumb state? That's the real question. No, so it is after we do all the events. What is a pad hat? Okay, so a hat is, you know how on some controllers the D-pad is separate buttons? I'll show you an example real quick. So if we go to Sony PSP, so on the, oh my God, would you just, okay. If you look at a Sony PSP, the D-pad buttons, well, this isn't true because it's actually a hat on the PSP. Never mind. If we get a 8-bit do Pro 2. Okay. If you, well, no, it's a hat here physically, but they map it as but. Okay, never mind. So the difference is a hat on a gamepad is when the D-pad is kind of like it is on the Game Boy Advance or the GameCube. It's like one solid piece, and there's like an axle in the middle. There's like a fulcrum, like there's a lever basically in the middle of the D-pad. There's like a little stick that goes down, and it's a pivot point for the D-pad. And so when you're tilting the D-pad, right? So the D-pad is a little hat on top of 4 contacts, and so you're tilting the hat to different sides to do D-pad input. And so in the joystick API, hats are differentiated from buttons. Um, and so a hat is read as one input. So the D-pad is one input, which is called a hat on a lot of controllers. And then it has a value, just an integer value for which orientation it's in. So when you're not touching the D-pad, it's at 0. And then when you're rolling the D-pad around, it'll have a different value based on which directions you're pressing on the D-pad. Whereas a button is just a single button and it can be either on or off. A hat is like an enumeration of like, well, the D-pad can be neutral, or it can be left, or it can be down and left, or it can be just down. Um, so because a lot of controllers map the D-pad as a hat, we have to support hats in here. So let's see. So in here, when we map the D-pad, let's print out something about it. So we'll have debug button state. Actually, we'll just do print. And this will be mapped button. And then we will have map. And then we will have we'll have map, and then we'll have button states map. And then we'll have the actual event. And then here we'll have mapped hat. Right? And so we'll see what we get. Yeah, so that's not true for the D-pad on every controller, but it is true for the D-pad on some controllers. I have an 8-bit do Pro 2 over here, and it physically, the D-pad is a hat, but it actually maps as 4 buttons instead. And the 8-bit do Pro 2 actually maps as 2 separate joysticks for me, I think because they're doing like compatibility with older and newer APIs, but I'm not sure about that. I'm speculating. So now if I hit down on the D-pad, what do I get? I get several Joy Hat motion events, first of all, which is weird. Actually, I think I'm just printing it multiple times. Oh, okay. So it checks, so we go in there and we check for each D-pad direction, right? And then right, but we should be updating them correctly. So yeah, so we set 1 to true and we set the other 3 to false. So that should be accurate. And then when we let it go, we set them all to false, right? That is indeed what we want. So here's 3 falses and a true. And then when we let go, there's 4 falses. So that should be accurate. Yeah, the Pro 2, the switch is interesting on the bottom. So like for me, it seems to work best as X input. But I think even when you do X input, I think it still shows up as a direct input as well. I'm not actually sure about that. I need to mess with it more. So this appears, so there's arrow keys, and then here's with the D-pad, and it does nothing. And I'm not sure why. So what we will do is in the input layer, whenever we're going to tick the pad, I'm just going to print those real quick. So I'm going to say gamepad print buttons, debug print buttons. And we'll come over here and we'll add that function real quick. Where are the interface functions? Debug print buttons. And so in this one, what we'll do is we'll just say print button states. And that's going to spam the crap out of the console. All right, and it's all false. Now we gotta go map the... Oh, I picked up the wrong controller. That one's not plugged in. Ha 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 ha. Okay, so now we'll go through these and map them real quick. Now they're mapped. And okay, so it is actually setting them true in here because I can look in the list and look at them. I've actually got a button for each button, so it is actually working. So I'm like, what gives? Let's go check this out. Right. Yeah, that'll be why. In this new scheme, we don't care because like in the old input system, we were using SDL's game controller API, and we were checking. Oh, we had support for 4 gamepads because I wrote the input system very early before I was really more sure about what the game was going to be. And so I had support for 4 gamepads, and I was doing stuff with like analog sticks and all the unused inputs because I wasn't sure what I'd want to use. All right, well, it's laggy as sin from all the logging, but it works. It works. All right. Okay. So now, if we go in here and let's turn off some logging. There we go. Let's say when debug leave those ones, and then map event. And I'm actually just going to turn these off here because we don't need them spamming all the time. All right. So yes, we'd like to map it. Let's go and map all the buttons. Well, okay. And now we can play with our arbitrary controller, which is nice. So this is a random old Xbox controller. So now I'm gonna unplug this. Now, if I plug it back in, it should, well, whenever it decides to connect anyway, it should just work, and it does because we have it mapped. Now if I unplug that and plug in a random GameCube controller. Okay. We plug in a random GameCube controller. Oh my gosh, it's an unknown input. Yes, I would like to map it. And now we can map this GameCube controller. If I could actually do it and stop trying to frame perfect the freaking... Oh, wrong button. My dog wants outside. And now I can play with my GameCube controller, which has always been mapped wrong. Which has always been mapped wrong in SDL's game controller API. I can actually play the game with it. Imagine the luxury. But anyway, I gotta let my dog outside. Yay, we got the thing to work. I'll be right back. All right. Let's see. Fragproof says there seems to be a pause at the end of the bar filling. Yeah, I'm probably gonna change that a little bit. Now you'll notice that rebooting the game, it doesn't remember my controller, and that's because I don't have it saving them right now. So that little pause is because I'm using easing, and it's not perfect with pixel rendering, and we might change that uh, to be a little bit more better for what we're doing. All right, cool. Hope you have a good day. Good luck with your client. And I did not mean to open a Sonic. Go away.